Hey everyone, welcome again to More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and our main topic today is going to be a movie that just came out that neither of us have seen. So if you're worried about spoilers, you probably won't be receiving too many because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, this is pretty much kind of a preview. We thought, we're going to talk a little bit about um, uh, what we might like to see in this new version of The Little Mermaid, what we might expect, and things like that, and just kind of pretty much go from there.
Right. And full disclosure, like I said, neither of us have seen it, and I personally don't have any inclination to see it. And for anyone wondering, this has nothing to do with who was cast as Ariel. For me, as long as they can act well and sing well, I could care less about much else.
Yeah.
Uh, but it just has to do with the fact that there have been so many live action remakes of Disney films, and most of them have not performed well. And I can only think of maybe two that I've seen that I've enjoyed to a point where I would watch it again. I think, and those would be like Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast. Um, But yeah, the live action remakes haven't had the best track record, and with how much this one has blown up for one reason or another, it has the opposite effect on me, and I feel less inclined to see it. Um, Now, a lot of people they have been saying it's one of their better, if not their best, live action remake up to this point. But because of the track record of the live action remakes so far, that's not as big an accomplishment as they might think, because the bar has been set pretty low.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score. Apparently, 68% of the critics with reviews on the site liked it.
Okay, that's a respectable number.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I will say about the whole Bailey controversy is, as far as I know, the character of Ariel has never been defined by a specific color or ethnicity or anything like that. So I don't see why anyone should care.
Right, and I mean, mermaids are mythological creatures, so it shouldn't matter too much, if at all. And I think even in other Little Mermaid stories that Disney has done, whether it be the sequel, the prequel, or the television series, I think they have had black mermaids before, so this is not necessarily new.
Yeah, if so, then good point. Yeah.
And then other people noticed that her sisters in the live action remake, from what I understand, almost all of them are a different ethnicity from each other. And I think the reasoning they had for that supposedly was they come from different regions of the world or they represent different regions of the world. So that could explain why. Um, but yeah, honestly, I don't care too much about who plays Ariel as just as long as they can portray the character well.
Yeah, fair. So yeah. Yeah. Let's examine a little bit more like what quality we could probably expect if we were to see this movie. The first thing I noticed was who directed it. It was directed by Rob Marshall, who directed the Oscar Best Picture Oscar winning film of Chicago, another musical movie. So
Okay.
so
I,
this wouldn't be entirely new to him.
yeah, that would make sense if he's done movies that have a lot of music in it before, like say Lin Manuel Miranda has. Then that would definitely give him more of a foothold than somebody who hasn't done it before. So that probably helps. Um, And from what I understand, Halle Bailey's performance has been very well received. If nothing else, that's like the one thing I hear people consistently praising. So I guess the director, when they selected her specifically, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they should.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Ursula or Triton were as well received as she was, but I guess they can't all be winners.
Not that I, no, but I've looked at like the career overviews of both the actors for Triton and Ursula, Javier Bardem and Melissa McCarthy, respectively, and well, they seem to be very logical choices. McCarthy, very comedic background. Bardem, best known for dramatic acting. So I don't see why not put him there.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely look great. Like the makeup and costume departments did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Uh, and since I haven't seen the movie, I can't say on my own personal account how well they did. I'm just going off what I heard other people say. Um, but I think one of the biggest complaints, aside from the casting choice of Ariel, that people had was that they didn't like how characters like Scuttle, Flounder, and Sebastian looked.
Yeah.
For one, many people were pointing out that they used an entirely different species of crab for Sebastian.
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult to replicate in think like 3D form, a character that's iconic in 2D, with such a very human-like design.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say to that is I remember when the live action Lion King was coming out, and many people were pointing out that the lions and all the other animals, they looked too realistic to the point where they couldn't really emote at all, which really hurt a lot of line deliveries or how things came across. But then there was somebody on YouTube, I can't remember who it was, but they did their own rendition of the trailer where I don't know what they did. They did some sort of special editing to make each character look like their animated counterpart, but they would still look like they fit in the real world. And I'm thinking if somebody who's not even making the actual movie can pull that off, then companies like Disney who have all this money should be able to do that as well. I don't know what led to the choices they made, but I feel like if somebody who doesn't have a budget like they do can pull something like that off, then they have less of an excuse themselves. That's just me.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is how Little Mermaid did financially. From what I understand, they had a budget of about 250 million, and worldwide they made about 164 during their opening weekend, which isn't great, especially since they spent about 140 million on marketing. So opening weekend specifically, they didn't make back what they spent. Um, and oftentimes in my research, I see people saying, in order for a movie to be considered successful, you should be making, or at least the movie should be making about 2.5 times, possibly up to 3 times how much their budget was. And with the budget and marketing, they spent almost 400 million and they made just over a quarter of that opening weekend. They probably have made it back by now, but of course, with any movie, the longer it's in theaters, the less money they make over time. So maybe it could be considered a success, though financially speaking, not one of their best performances.
Yeah, I just looked at the numbers. It says the current box office total 414.2 million. So they've plenty more than broken even at this point. Probably not at the preferred pace, but still eventually.
Well, yeah, if you put the budget and the marketing together, that's about 400. And if they've made about 414, they have broken even and even exceeded it a little bit, though it doesn't appear that they made a lot of money back. They still have, but it's nowhere near the numbers that they would have needed for this movie to be considered an outright success. It was still successful, statistically speaking, but it definitely could have done better.
Yeah. Yeah, well, with the profit they have, they could probably acquire another production company and co-produce the next live action Disney with them.
Entirely possible. I mean, they're working on a live action Moana already for some reason, despite that movie only being out for like 7 years. Um, and I think they already have the casting for a live action Hunchback.
Yeah,
And
I
I looked,
just saw something for Hunchback, a poster or something with like cast names on it.
yeah, they had a poster style rendition with the title, and of course it's Hunchback of Notre Dame. Uh, and from what I understand, I think they were saying Josh Gad would be Quasimodo, which could work. I'm not speculating. That's not the right word. Skeptical a little bit. I'll keep an open mind for now because I know he can sing. I know he can perform, and he's been in live action remakes before. Uh, he's worked closely with Disney for a while. I think they said Gal Gadot, or however you pronounce her name, the
Right.
lady who played Wonder Woman in the DC universe. She's going to be as I cannot talk, Esmeralda, which offhand seems like a solid choice. I haven't heard her sing before, at least not from what I can remember. But I feel like she could at least pull the look off.
Yeah.
Uh, and
If she
I
can
believe
sing too, that'd be cool.
I was about to say that that would be absolutely ideal because with this being a Disney musical, you would want them to sing. Uh, and I'm assuming there was some audition that took place for that. Uh, I think they said Chris Evans was going to be Captain Phoebus, and I think that would be a very solid choice because he's already made a name for himself, especially in the world of Marvel. I know he's done some other stuff as well, and he's played roles like that before. And considering the voice of Phoebus, or at least in the animated version, I feel like Chris Evans could do something similar, really portray that persona really well. Um, so I think that was a solid choice. And then I don't remember who they said their gargoyles were going to be, but I believe
Uh,
they. Hmm?
yeah, I was just reading up on that. It looks like they've got Jack Black, Tim Allen, and Glenn Close.
Well, I imagine Jack Black is going to be Hugo, and then Tim Allen could be Victor. Glenn Close as Laverne, maybe. Those could be good. Again, I'm going to keep an open mind on those. And then I believe they said Peter Capaldi was going to be Frollo. I haven't seen too much of him. I know they said, or at least I know that he was, I think it was the 12th Doctor for Doctor Who. And I've seen brief snippets of him doing that. And I know kind of what he looks like. So it could work, but I haven't seen too much to really form a solid opinion on that. But
Well, yeah.
overall, I think the casting, from what I can tell, are some good choices for that one. So I might actually see that one when it comes out. I'll look into it more as more info and trailers come out, but I look forward to it a little bit.
Well, anyway, a big part of the Little Mermaid's legacy, of course, is the music, the songs, music by Alan Menken, who signed on to do it again for this version. And then, of course, you've got the songs like Under the Sea, Kiss the Girl, the familiar ones, and some new original ones, I believe, were crafted by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of movies recently, especially ones that have music in it. Um, and I think a running joke that has started to surface is that if Lin-Manuel Miranda is involved, you can expect there to be some rap song in there at some point. And from what I understand, there is a rap in The Little Mermaid with Sebastian and Scuttle.
Yeah. Kind of modernizes it up a little bit.
A little, yeah, and like with any other song, it should have a purpose, and maybe this one does. But yeah, if Lin-Manuel Miranda is involved, expect a rap in there somewhere at some point.
Yeah, well, Trump once said, if you put my name on it, you know it's going to be good. Well, I don't know how accurate that is, but I think if you put Lin Manuel Miranda on a project, then usually it turns out well.
Yeah, I can't think of too many or really any projects off the top of my head where he was involved that didn't do that well. So he's a solid option, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so about the songs, uh, people have probably said that they have a lot with this version to live up to regarding the songs.
Hmm.
And you probably would know better than some others because you have done The Little Mermaid on stage in the past.
Yep.
And specifically, you were Sebastian, so you had a couple or so big songs that you had to lead on, didn't you?
Yeah, I had Kiss the Girl and I had Under the Sea, which in my Artist Unlimited career is still one of my favorite moments that we've had, particularly because of how much fun everybody was having. Um, but yeah, as Sebastian, I did have a couple big numbers. Uh, and one would think that that would put a lot of weight or a big burden or expectation on my shoulders, but I didn't really feel that because it was something that I looked forward to doing. I was really excited for it. And of course, I still wanted to do the character justice, so I did some research. I went back and watched the animated film at least a couple times. I listened to the Broadway soundtrack God knows how many times. Uh, and of course, I worked with our directors a lot to really get this stuff down. And I think what we turned out was phenomenal. I don't mean to toot my own horn in any way. That this is more
Mm.
of giving credit to those whom I worked with to really make the character who it was that they were.
Yeah, I can imagine Carl, the artistic director, telling you to pretty much just go for it, and that's what you did, isn't it?
Yeah, oftentimes with characters like that, they will still very much give me some direction. Like when you get to this point, try this, or I want you to do this, or make sure you do something like this. Um, but on certain things, they usually just say, go for it, show us what you got. And Under the Sea was a great example of that. Because, yeah, they still had the choreography for me. They wanted to make sure I enunciated very well and got the point of what I was singing about across. But especially at one point during the song when it was just instrumentals and I had to dance. They literally just let me do whatever I wanted, just like improvised dance moves, and the audience loved it. Granted, I had a limited space because I was up on a platform to do it, but I made the most of what I got, and it was definitely a highlight of the show.
Man, that's cool. You get to have like your own little creative freedom up there, and yeah, that probably made it even more fun.
Oh, it absolutely did. I still remember some of the stuff I did, but when they just let you go crazy and do some of the stuff that you want to do, even if it's off the top of your head, it can yield some great results. Now, granted, sometimes they also do that just to see what I come up with, and if it's something they like, they'll tell me to stick with it. But if they want to change something, they'll let me know. So it can work as a fun improvisational thing, but it can also be a nice little experiment to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a director will be like, okay, just this is your scenario, go for it. And then the actor might do something, and the director will look at that and think, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant.
So now, with the songs again for this new Little Mermaid movie, you know, people are probably expecting, well, these songs to measure up really well, and "Kiss the Girl" was probably the one that people eh, were buzzing or getting very serious about because of like political heated debates or feminism, whatever. And they have reported that some lyrics have been changed to reflect modern times for "Kiss the Girl."
Yeah, supposedly some of the reasoning they had for that, particularly for that song, was they changed it so that it didn't seem like, at least this is what they were saying, so that it didn't seem like Eric was forcing himself on her, which I haven't seen the animated one in a while, but I don't remember getting that impression from him that he was forcing himself. And if anything, she was trying to urge him to kiss her, but yeah, I don't recall an instance where it seemed like he was trying to make it happen to the point where it got uncomfortable. Um, but maybe they just wanted to avoid some controversy and in the end just created more. I don't know. I think there was at least one other song that they changed the lyrics of, but I don't remember which one it was.
At some point, there's a good chance you're going to generate controversy anyway, no matter what you do, because everybody is so different.
Yeah, everybody's different, and we live in a day and age where a lot of people will look into every minute detail to try and find something to be offended by. So it's really difficult to find or create something that everybody will unanimously agree with or like. So at this point, it's hard not to get covered in controversy. Some controversy can be avoided. Uh, yeah, I don't think it's possible to 100% avoid it.
But people think of it this way: for every fan, there's a million hecklers. That's just kind of a phrase I thought up kind of right now on the spot, actually.
And I mean, that's not entirely inaccurate, although I would probably say I'd probably swap the numbers a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, the majority of people generally, if it's something that was put together well, will enjoy it. But there's always at least one bad apple that spoils it for everybody else.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of like when you go to a comedy special, and you can find compilations of these on YouTube where a comedian will just be going through their routine. They might have said some of these jokes before at different venues, but then there's some idiot that screams off the top of their lungs saying something real stupid and completely brings everything to a halt, which frustrates not only the audience but the comedian themselves. And the same can be said for any other form of entertainment, like movies.
Okay. Yeah. Oh well, it is what it is. I have heard nothing but positive comments honestly about this new movie, and I'd say if some friends of mine wanted to see it or something, I would be probably up for it. And I don't see any reason to be skeptical.
Yeah, I probably still won't see it unless, like you said, somebody invited me or if they had it at their house and they wanted to watch it. Um, if it's well received by the public, all the more power to them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't care too much what the critical consensus is. I just if it looks good, if the advertising makes it look good or whatever, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, if the Mario movie taught us anything, is that the critical score, especially on sites like Rotten Tomatoes, shouldn't always be taken too seriously because critics didn't so much like the Mario movie, but I couldn't think of a single person that wasn't a critic that said that they didn't like it. So it's one of those things where you just got to see it to decide for yourself. And maybe I will at some point, but I just don't feel like doing that right now.
Yeah, well, anyway, we'll move on now to our sort of um, more curious question portion. And this time it's who are some performer friends you can see playing specific pre existing characters, and which characters specifically?
All right. So I had a few of our friends that I wrote down. And the first person I wrote down is our good friend Dalton. And I actually wrote down multiple characters for him. The first being the Joker, partly because, the Joker's been portrayed in many different ways by many different people. So it wouldn't be too out of the question. Plus, the Joker seems to be one of those characters that he just loves to do. He's dressed up as the Joker for Halloween before, and he's done the voice and the laugh in such a way where he's made it his own, and I could really see him doing it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of heard him talk about him, I think, the Joker. And yeah, I would, I guess I would have to agree with that one.
Yeah, and I think he kind of references Heath Ledger and sometimes Mark Hamill, but
Yeah.
yeah, he still makes it his own. And then the next character I thought for him was Phil from Hercules, because there have been plenty of times where he and I have been hanging out or just joking around or whatever, and he will just go into Phil's voice or persona a lot, and it's really solid. I really think he could get that zany, semi-serious, kind of goofy character really well down pat. I could definitely see it. Even if it were to some reason be another animated version, he could definitely pull it off.
Okay.
Yep. And then the other two I could see him doing are from Aladdin. The first I thought of was Iago, mostly because he can just do the voice. He's really been able to polish the Gilbert Gottfried impression. It's not exactly like Gilbert Gottfried, but it's to the point where people will be like, I know exactly which character you're doing. Uh, but of course, I think the more obvious of the two would be the genie. He's comparing him more so to the Robin Williams version, he's got the energy of the genie, he's got the zaniness, the goofiness of the genie, but he can still bring it down. He can be serious, he can be compassionate, a lot like that version of the genie is. And I remember a lot of times in recent memory when Artists Unlimited has talked about doing Aladdin or hypothetically casting us for Aladdin, everyone has said, if we do that show, he would be the genie.
Don't see why not.
Oh, yeah. I feel like there are very few people that could portray the genie in the cast the way that he would do it. And I mean that in the best way. But then the next person I thought of was our good friend Sammy. Uh, this isn't a character that has been in a musical. This character in particular, she's been in a game that was eventually turned into a TV show um, that is based off the character Cuphead. Um, and I feel like she could do the character of Baroness von Bonbon very well, especially when it comes to the TV series featuring her. She's not in it for very long, but she's definitely memorable. She's got a lot of energy. She's got that kind of crazy and every once in a while really psychotic sort of side to her. And I don't mean this as a knock to Sammy. I mean this as a compliment. But I've seen moments where Sammy can do something like that really well, either in the shows that we've done or just when I'm hanging out with her. Like when we did the Wicked the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. When she did that, she could do the psychotic and yet still fun type of character, and that's kind of what this character is. Um, but the character still talks casually, sometimes does something random or sporadic, and I could see Sammy doing a lot of those things. And then, moving on to the next one, I have someone who's not in the cast with us anymore, but has been in the past. I thought of Cody. He was Cogsworth when we did Beauty and the Beast. I could see him as Aladdin because I feel like he could really get Aladdin's character type nailed. Because he's got that sort of compassionate side. He's got that caring for others despite the position he might be in. And I've heard him sing. He can sing really well. So I think this would be something that he could really pull off. And if he put this up with Dalton's portrayal of Genie, I feel like the two of them could work off each other really well. And then the next one I thought of is one that we've talked about before, because when in a previous episode we were discussing a hypothetical casting for our upcoming show, Seussical, and I thought of Seth here as the Cat in the Hat. And I think we went into more detail on this in a previous episode, but Seth is a guy that I've known for a while, and I'm talking to the audience here. And the Cat in the Hat, he just has a lot of fun. He's got several personas that I've seen Seth pull off really well. And I feel like this would be a great opportunity for Seth to have a big role in general, anyways. And this character would really fit. I really think so.
Yeah, well, I'm honored, and if it does happen, I'm going to really try and go for it and have fun with it.
Yeah, I, for one, am rooting for you. That is for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. And then I thought of myself in which characters I could do, and there were a few that I thought possibly. Um, but the three that I wrote down, just completely hypothetical. Uh, the first one being Hercules. I don't know if there will be a stage version of that ever made. I know there's a live action of that coming eventually. Um, but in terms of the animated film, some of the stuff that Hercules goes through, I've been able to connect with. Like, he's the guy that stands out for supposedly the wrong reasons, but multiple times he takes what was seen as a problem and turned that into a both metaphorical and literal strength. And he just stayed true to who he was, despite how everybody was treating him. And eventually everybody was like, I like this guy. So that could be fun. I also thought of Hades, partly because of the whole improv thing. He's really goofy, but he's not your standard villain, which is kind of funny because Hades is like the god of the underworld. So he should be seen as the evilest of all evil, and in some ways he still is. But unlike other Disney villains, he doesn't usually talk as maniacally or deviously. He talks more like a almost like a lawyer in a way. And plus, there have been multiple times where I just record lines on a program or website or whatever, where I read his lines, trying to do the character justice. And I just have so much fun with it anytime I do one of his lines. Sometimes, even when I was with my family and we were recording Hades, I would just have a blast saying some of his lines like, see, he's got to have a weakness because everybody's got a weakness. I mean, for what? Pandora, it was the box thing. For the Trojans, hey, they bet on the wrong horse. Um, yeah, his kind of character I just love to do, so I would just have a blast with it. And then the last one would also be from Aladdin. Maybe I could see myself doing Aladdin, possibly Genie, but I think a common choice that not only I've had, but several other people have said as well, is me portraying Jafar. Partly because of the way he looks. I mean, he's tall and thin, kind of like how I am, but it's also because of the voice. And I'm talking about the animated one here, not the live action. The animated Jafar has like a deep, threatening, almost kind of slithery voice, which is fitting because he turns into a snake later. And it's a type of voice that I really know how to do. So if I polish it a little bit, I feel like I could do a solid portrayal of Jafar, but that would be up to the viewing audience.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then I thought of a couple of our friends for if there was ever a musical version or a live action adaptation of Tangled at some point. And I thought if that were to ever happen, I could see my friend Olivia Gray portraying Rapunzel. I feel like in many ways the two are very similar, and I mean that in all the most positive ways I can think of. Like, Olivia has shown to be a phenomenal performer, a phenomenal singer, and she's got a very similar energy to Rapunzel in the movie. So I really think if she were to ever come back to artists and we were somehow able to do a stage version of Tangled, she would absolutely nail the character of Rapunzel.
Yeah, well, I didn't get to perform with her, but I'll just take your word for it.
I mean, she's had experience playing some very big important characters before, like she was Belle when we did Beauty and the Beast. She was Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. So she's got the experience as well, and that certainly would help. Now, when it comes to the villain of Tangled, that being Mother Gothel, I thought of our friend Jenna. And I know we've kind of gone over this before, but for those who might just be tuning in for the first time, our friend Jenna has shown that she is really good, and this is meant as a compliment. She's really good at playing characters that are sassy or sinister, something along that line. And Mother Gothel is both. So if Jenna had the opportunity to portray her, I have a hard time picturing anybody else doing it.
Oh. When you started talking about like the villain entangled, Mother Gothel, oh, that same person, Jenna Diskin, came to my mind as well.
There you
Yeah,
go.
even before you said it, honestly. Yeah, and so yeah, and I have done the past few shows, the few shows I've done so far with her, and no, from my experience, from what I've been able to see, I haven't been able to see the full picture, or maybe not the full extent of her ability, but what I've seen uh, has been pretty solid.
Oh, absolutely. And the way Mother Gothel sings in the movie, Jenna has a very similar style in how she sings. So not only would she be able to get this singing voice down, but she would be able to absolutely nail the persona of Mother Gothel and put that up with Olivia Gray as Rapunzel. Those two would be phenomenal together, working off of each other extremely well. And then the last one I wrote down kind of circles back around to Hunchback with the live action one coming out. And this is another guy that we've had in our cast before that I don't think you, Seth, have worked with before because I think he left after Little Mermaid. And this would be Micah Puzio. He's done characters like Gaston when we did Beauty and the Beast. He was King Triton in The Little Mermaid. So he's able to do those kind of characters that have a strong physique or a commanding presence. And Captain Phoebus, he has those things. He's not necessarily as big a character as, say, Quasimodo or even Frollo, but he's still an important part of the story. And I think if he were to come back for Hunchback, I wouldn't be surprised if he was Phoebus because he's done characters like that before. And I feel like he could really get the authority that Phoebus demands really well. But he's also got a compassionate side, particularly when he's working with Quasimodo or Esmeralda. So, yeah, I think his performance of Phoebus, if that were to be a thing, would be very solid.
Yeah, well, again, I'll take your word for it. I don't really, the name doesn't really ring a bell or anything, and so I don't know. Maybe I've seen him without knowing it, so I'll just take your word for it there.
Yeah, at some point, if we go back and watch the previous installments on DVD or something, maybe you have an opportunity to see how he performed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right. I put down several of my own, and let's take the first one I thought of. I actually thought of three possible performers for the same character for the first thing on my bullet list.
Okay.
For Lunette the Clown on the Big Comfy Couch, if they did like maybe a revival series or recreated it or something. I could see her being portrayed by Bailey Katina, Dominique D'Amico, or Delaney Carroll.
Uh, Honestly, I could definitely see those working. Um, right after you said Delaney, it's like I feel like she has that goofy side to her that could really match up well with Lunette. So that could definitely work.
Yeah, and I'd say just for me, I think Lunette pretty much carried most of the weight of that series. She was like my favorite thing about it, honestly. Oh, the affection, the energy, and she just this personality uh, that I just found um, so captivating, and I feel like from being around those three ladies, I think they give off the same kind of vibe that I think would probably fit right in.
Okay,
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. I take and then I really tried to think of it probably wasn't too hard. It probably didn't take me too long, but I wanted to include an example for you.
Okay.
And mm, I probably thought of this long before we planned this. Marty McFly in the Back to the Future saga.
Didn't they just create a musical for that too?
Yeah, yeah, it was supposed to come on Broadway this month, actually. I don't know if it's going to be later this month or if it's on Broadway already or
Well, that could definitely be fun. I hadn't really thought about that before. Um, yeah, I remember watching the Back to the Future movies, and I loved watching the dynamic between Marty and Doc. So, yeah, that would be really fun. And honestly, even if it wasn't actually functioning the same way it did in the films, I would love to try out a hoverboard.
yeah. Yeah, honestly, I think you kind of have maybe a similar vibe to like Michael J. Fox in the movies. So I think you'd be a good pick.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. 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 I take and then I thought of someone you may not know personally, but I have sort of met briefly through my younger brother, who is a longtime friend of his down in Nashville. John Schwally. You've probably heard of him because I've talked about him and the music he's made with my brother. Yeah, the John Lewis shirt that I was actually wearing. I think again just today, wasn't I? Right?
I think
That
so.
great
Yeah.
John.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's him, John Lewis or John
Okay.
Lewis Schwally. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, yeah. So that's my brother's musician friend. They recorded an album together that they put out. So I've got the merchandise T-shirt. I've been trying to kind of spread the word about with it, and anyway, I thought about him. I thought back to the 2000s version of Disney's Freaky Friday and the love interest Jake, like who's kind of this sort of laid back kind of rocker vibe type, and I feel like that would kind of fit John Schwally well.
All right. And like you said, I don't really know him, and I don't know too much about Freaky Friday. So for this particular one, I will almost solely be going off your word on this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This one might be kind of easier for you to go along with. I've I was trying to think of something, I think, for our mutual friend Esther Dykstra, who experienced stage performer, singer, plays piano. So, if I remember correctly, I was trying to think of something for her, and I ended up landing with uh, you know Maisie Labird in Seussical.
Well, I haven't known her as long as you have, but in the time that I have known her, uh, I could definitely see her pulling off the character well. Uh, may not be able to match Jenna. Now, I'm not saying she'd be worse than Jenna. In fact, I almost see this as a good thing because if she played it the exact same way as Jenna did, then it would just be more of the same. But if she can do something different, which I think that she can, it will be a fun performance to watch if she were to be cast as that. And not too long ago, I really got an opportunity to hear her sing, and I know she can. So putting those two things together, I do think that one can work.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I thought of another one of our Artists Unlimited friends. I said Riley Katina, who is graduating high school this year, so he's uh, gonna be likely moving on from AU at this point. And I thought of him as Ryan in High School Musical. Pretty much anytime I see Riley, he is as he is so uh, full of smiles, so energetic, and really engaging enthusiastically with pretty much everybody. And I feel like that's the kind of person that Ryan is. I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, there are very few times in my interactions with Riley where I haven't seen him smile. He just looks like a guy who likes to have a lot of fun and he very much cares for other people. And I've seen High School Musical. I lost count how many times because I often would watch it with my sister. Um, and Ryan was always a fun character to watch. So yeah, I think Riley as Ryan is a solid pick. I could definitely see that one working and having a blast watching it.
Yeah, yeah. That's like, and then I thought of something for our mutual friend Jenna, who we mentioned earlier, and I thought of this is a bit of a smaller movie role. It's Chutney Wyndham in the film Legally Blonde. Chutney is in the movie the young daughter of the woman who was put on trial in the movie for murder.
Oh, okay. I couldn't
And then
remember which one Chutney was. I have seen the movie, but this was 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
yeah, well, well, to be fair, it is a kind of obscure character, at least relatively speaking. But yeah, she's the daughter of the woman accused of murder. She gets called to the witness stand late in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and then you mentioned Dalton earlier, and I also thought of him, and I thought
Okay.
of Phantom of the Opera. I think purely based on his sort of, I don't know if flamboyant is the right word, kind of like, or and his like classical singing voice and that sort of one of classical, local, flamboyant, if that's the right word, delivery. So think maybe based on that, pretty much why I went with that.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Phantom of the Opera is one that Dalton and I have wanted to do for the longest time. It's not necessarily a show that artists would do because of a lot of the sensitive material in it. Um, but oftentimes we've discussed who we could see as certain characters. Sometimes we talk about Raoul or Christine. And for the Phantom, it's always kind of been up in the air. We often tell each other that we could see the other person doing it. But yeah, I could definitely see Dalton doing it. I thought about that before. He's got that side of him that could really pair up well with the Phantoms. And again, I mean that in the best way. Um, and Dalton has been shown that he can do an opera style singing voice because I think he's actually had some training in that field. So
Yeah, I
if
think that was his college major. I think,
was it? It might have
I
been
believe, I believe, or classical or whatever they called it.
something like that. But I know he's been shown how to do it and he's practiced it a lot. So putting those together, and even before we brought this up just now, I would say Dalton as the Phantom would work. A very solid option.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. And then you also said Sammy Fike earlier, and I thought of her myself as Miss Hannigan and Annie, based on her sort of. I don't know how would I describe it? Like sort of, kind of like psychotic, freaked out delivery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm
So
thinking
yeah,
back to Miss Hannigan because it has been a little while since I've seen Annie, but I can still very much remember Miss Hannigan.
yeah, yeah. I'm
And
basing
based
this
off,
purely off. I'm basing this more off like the little taste that I've seen of the Jane Lynch performance of the character on
okay,
Broadway. So yeah, yeah. But anyway, you were saying?
I was saying it's kind of like what I was saying with my entry for her, where it's like a goofy, sort of psychotic. And again, this isn't meant to sound like a bad thing, but Sammy can do that sort of character, which is in a way kind of funny in of itself because she's the kind of person that doesn't always go out and approach other people. Um, so this kind of character would be kind of outside, not necessarily her comfort zone, but outside the box for her a little bit, which could really extend the range of her talents as well. Like she's usually a little bit more reserved, which is kind of what the opposite of Miss Hannigan. So maybe this could not only expand her range of talent, but also could maybe bring her out of her shell a little bit. I don't know. I wouldn't force that upon her, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's all the list I had, and so I think that's going to do it. Thanks to everyone again for watching, listening, whatever, and you can keep up with us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and what was the other one? Anchor. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and if you you want to send us your suggestions, comments, questions, maybe answer the questions we discussed today. Your thoughts on Little Mermaid, thoughts on friends you could see doing roles, whatever you got, send it our way.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen The Little Mermaid or various other live action remakes, let us know why. Um, if you have seen any of them, especially this newest one, let us know what you think because the more opinions we hear, the more honestly we just love to hear what people think about various topics. Uh, so yeah, like he said, send us your suggestions, send us your thoughts on what we've talked about. If you have any ideas of your own that we haven't talked about but you would like us to, also let us know that. Really, any interaction we have with our audience, we look forward to because, yeah, as much as we like talking to each other, we also like to expand by sharing the thoughts of other people.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you maybe once or twice more before we go off season. So until next time, take care.
So long.